Welcome to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. On this podcast, we journey through the devastating experience of the death of a child. Grief is seldom discussed openly in our culture, and the death of a child makes people feel even more uncomfortable. We approach the topic openly and honestly, speaking to people who have lost loved ones and experts who help care for them. Whether you are a parent experiencing loss or someone who wants to support another going through this tragedy, this podcast strives to offer hope and help.
Welcome to episode 99 of Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. I'm Marcy Larson, Andy's mom. I actually cannot believe I'm already at episode 99. In some ways, it feels like this just started and I just started my podcast, but in other ways, I know that it has grown and changed over these past 2 years. So next week, we are having a very special 100th episode, and that one will be quite a bit different from what I've done in the past. Now, I am a little nervous about this, but what we've decided to do is that Eric and I are going to host a live stream event. The live stream will be able to be seen on YouTube, which is the Always Andy's Mom YouTube channel. Also on Facebook and on Twitter. So there will be many different platforms that you can use. I am going to want people to submit questions that Eric and I can answer. So if you have any burning questions for me about what I'm doing or what I've done or where we've been, feel free to ask that. You can do that ahead of time as well by emailing me at Marcy, M-A-R-C-Y, at andysmom.com. Also, we will be monitoring things through Facebook, so you can send those live messages there. I'm not exactly sure how things will work, so we will be kind of learning as we go, but I'm excited to do this event just to be able to hear directly from listeners a little bit. Know that if there aren't a lot of questions, I still will just share what I feel like I've learned over the past couple of years and have Eric share some things as well. So today I have the privilege of talking with Kate, Miles' mom. Kate is yet another guest from Ontario, Canada. So before you all start accusing me of only interviewing Canadians now, know that the next month I do have quite a few American guests set up, and I am happy to speak with guests from any country. So it's just a little funny that I've had so many people from Ontario in such a short period of time. But thank you, Canadian listeners, for that. So Kate is very early in her grief journey. Her son Miles died just 5 months ago now. In fact, Kate and her husband began listening to the podcast a couple of weeks before Miles died when they knew his illness was terminal and they brought him home to die. I think they were grasping and hoping to get any way to prepare a little bit for the death of Miles. But as we all know, you really can't prepare for the loss of your child, no matter how hard you may want to. So in today's episode, we talk about this raw, real grief. And there are a lot of tears shed. But tears are good and tears are understandable. Kate certainly brought me back to some of those first days and months after Andy died. And I know she's not feeling very amazing or awesome right now, but I do know that she has so much to offer other grieving parents, even now, so early. Well, thank you so much, Kate, for agreeing to come on the show today and share your son, Miles, with us.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Yes. You came to me in a rather unique way because you wrote to me at a time when Miles actually was still alive.
Yeah. It was interesting. My husband and I found your podcast when our son was diagnosed terminal. So we brought him home to die, and we sort of stumbled upon your podcast. I was just desperately searching for anything that was going to help prepare us for the inevitable. And yeah, thankfully stumbled upon your amazing podcast, and we listened to it like voraciously for the 3 weeks that we had him at home. We just he slept a lot during that time, so I would literally have him on my chest and have my earbuds in listening to your episodes, and they just helped immensely. So my husband actually said to me when he left this morning, he said, "Remember to thank Marcy for us, thank her for all she does." And I said, "I will." So yeah, I just want to start off by really thanking you. Your episodes helped us immensely during that time and since. And I feel like what you're doing is just so important. It's really shedding light on a topic that, first of all, people are kind of scared to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And second of all, I think hearing other parents speak when you're going through, losing a child, I think hearing other parent is really one of the only things that brings immense comfort, is to know that you're not alone, and know that, other people are dealing with the exact same things that you are. So
Yeah, that's it exactly. I think you just feel so incredibly alone and isolated because,
mm-hmm.
for the most part, hopefully, your personal friends and family haven't experienced this, right? Because child loss isn't that common. It's not that common
No,
to have your
no.
child die.
And part of that is good. I mean,
It's great,
obviously,
right? Right. Overall, it's
but
great.
yeah, and all of us, of course, in this special little club would never wish this pain on anybody else. And so, you're just sort of left in this wilderness alone, and it's so isolating. And I am so grateful that we found your podcast, and so grateful that we've been able to hear the stories of other parents, and at different stages in their grief as well. And I think that was really key for us, was that small beacon of hope, that even though we were in what we knew would be, hopefully the darkest time of our lives,
Mm-hmm.
that there was this little beacon of hope, that other parents were out there, and like, guess what? They were still, living and able to speak about their loss, and able to sort of reflect and get to a place of healing. And that was just so hopeful for us, because when we first brought him home, it was, just devastating.
Especially when you bring him home, and because, quote, there is no hope, right? I mean, that's
Yeah.
like, there's no more hope. There's nothing else we can do. Take him home.
Yeah.
But really, there was no hope of Miles conquering his illness, but that doesn't mean there's no hope for your life forever. And there is a difference. And but I'm glad that was able to help you. But for now, I just want to hear all about Miles. So you talk about Miles and who he was as a little guy, and just all about him, okay?
Yeah, absolutely. So Miles is our first and only child. He was born in February of 2020, and he came to us after years of infertility struggles. So he was conceived through IVF.
Mm-hmm.
We waited a long time for him.
Yeah.
So when he came, he was just the sweetest, happiest little baby. We were ready, obviously, to have that change in our lives, to be new parents, but he made it easy. Like, he was so just contented and calm and happy. He was a lovely baby. So yeah, we went through the first couple of months as it's a blur with figuring out, how to be parents and be sleep deprived and still, manage to get up and function. So yeah, we had a great couple of months, and it was the beginning of COVID. So he was born February 2020. So it was really a month before everything hit. Yeah. So things drastically changed, obviously, in March. We were, isolating and unable to really introduce him to a lot of our family. So it was a strange time. It was like this time of joy and wanting to share our new baby. And then also having, this scary pandemic happening where we couldn't really share him. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting first couple of months, but
Yeah, for sure.
anyway, Yeah, we went along, and then in April, around Easter weekend, my husband was just playing with Miles and just noticed that his right foot felt a little bit more firm than his left foot. Like it was a really subtle difference, but it was like a little bump. So, my husband sort of said like this is weird. Like, feel this, doesn't it feel different? And so we kind of, looked at it and whatever. And in Ontario, we have like a 24-hour, this was the weekend. So we have a 24-hour health service called telehealth. So you can call in and explain, what's going on. And we also have a couple of friends who are nurses and doctors. So we were texting people and just saying like, this is weird. Should we be worried? Should we bring him in? Could this be an infection? But of course, we were looking for signs of infection, sure. any streaking or anything worrisome. And there was nothing. And it was just this little innocuous kind of bump under the ball of his foot. So anyway, we got referred after the weekend, we got referred out to get some imaging done. So the initial ultrasound result came back saying, that there was this small, mass, but that it was almost certainly benign and that, it was likely a hemangioma, which I'm sure you understand what that is. So it's like a tangled, like a series of tangled blood vessels under the skin.
Yeah.
So that's what they thought it was. We wanted to investigate further. I even if it was a hemangioma, we wanted to, know what that was. So we got referred to a pediatrician down about half an hour from where we live in Aurelia. And she was wonderful. She took a look at it and she said, it's a little bit like a hemangioma doesn't usually happen in this spot, like in the bottom of the foot. It's kind of a strange place. So she said, I'm going to refer you down to dermatology at Sick Kids Hospital, which is our big children's hospital in the area in Toronto. So she sent a referral down. And in the meantime, they ordered an MRI, and the MRI found the mass again. But this time, the first we heard that it could be cancer was basically when our pediatrician called us and said, dermatology would like to bring in oncology for a consult. And that was the first, really scary moment. It was, I remember being at home alone. My husband was at work and they called, our pediatrician called just to give us a heads up and said, they don't know anything yet, but they're calling in oncology. I just don't want you to be surprised when you're down at Sick Kids that oncology is coming in for a consult. And it was like, okay, so this is, so we had obviously lots of questions and we were terrified. And sure enough, after the team down at Sick Kids got the imaging and did the exam, they brought in oncology. And I'll never forget the oncologist coming in and, she was wearing her mask and, I could just see her eyes and I just knew it was bad. So yeah, she told us that he likely had a form of sarcoma, which is a soft tissue cancer. So, she said that they have a great team and they'd be working with us and that we'd get a biopsy done and figure out where to go from there. So flash forward sort of 2 or 3 weeks, we were waiting for the biopsy result. He went in and had his biopsy and we were waiting for the result. But in the meantime, his foot was growing quite alarmingly, actually. It was really growing quickly. And so we sort of pushed to get him admitted sooner.
Right.
Said, if the initial biopsy result has shown that this is cancer, then we need to start treatment. Like it's growing really fast. So luckily the team was amazing. Our sarcoma, like our soft tissue cancer team was phenomenal and they got us in. And basically we started chemo within a month of him having his first image of his foot. So they recommended 5 rounds of chemo. So we started chemotherapy in May and then he had chemotherapy until August, but in May, by the end of May, early June, they also told us that he was going to have his foot amputated. So that was another huge, moment for us. That was just reimagining what his life would look like. Living with any disability obviously is nothing you want for your child. I mean, we knew that his sort of fiery little spirit would be able to handle it, but it was a big pill to swallow.
Sure.
So he got scheduled for his amputation surgery in September after he finished chemo. So we went through the summer in and out of the hospital, fevers and blood work and transfusions and all the fun stuff that comes with chemo. And yeah, he had his right foot amputated in September. And at that point, we kind of thought that it was behind us. Like we thought, you know, the chemo had worked really well. He had responded really well to the chemo. And with this amputation, it was quite an aggressive, you know, treatment plan. So we thought, okay, like this is good. So we had some imaging done in the fall. Images looked relatively clear. They had also found traces of cancer in his lymph nodes by this point.
Okay.
But the chemo had cleared them up. So in the round of imaging after his surgery, they also resected a couple of lymph nodes from behind his knee during the surgery, and those showed that there was no active cancer behind his knee.
Wow. Yeah. So that was very encouraging. Yeah.
Very encouraging. Yeah. And again, he was just such a happy little guy. Like he rebounded from the surgery so well. We have this one picture and he was literally waking up from after his sedation. It was a 6.5-hour surgery. And we, of course, were beside ourselves with anxiety. And I went to see him in the recovery room and he sort of stirred awake. And then we have this one picture of literally him waking up and just like beaming smile, looking up at me.
Really?
And out like he was amazing. He pulled us through. He really did. He pulled us through that time because we were obviously terrified and he was like, guys, it's okay. Yeah. I'm good.
Yeah, we're good.
So, yeah. He was truly incredible. Yeah. So he recovered really well from his surgery in September. And then we had some good scans, really encouraging scans in the fall. And he went to get fitted at this amazing rehab hospital we have here in Toronto, just south of us. That's called Holland Bloorview, and they do all sorts of amazing stuff with kiddos with a variety of disabilities. So he got fitted for his first little prosthesis, which was like this big, just this little prosthetic leg. So he got fitted for it and he was starting to use it. He was just starting to kind of crawl and get used to it and, you know, jump on it in his little jolly jumper. You know, he was really showing signs of like, you know, again, like I'm fine. I'm going to make this happen and it's going to be good. You know, I know you guys are worried, but it's going to be good. So, you know, we went through the fall and we had a wonderful Christmas. We had one set of scans in December right before Christmas, and they showed a little bit of an enlargement in a couple of the lymph nodes behind his knee again. But the doctors reassured us that a lot of times after a lymph node resection surgery, the lymph takes some time to reroute. So sometimes it can cause an enlargement of the other lymph nodes because they're compensating. So they sort of said like, you know, we're not overly worried. We're going to monitor it, but we're not overly worried. So go home, have a great Christmas. And we did. So even though that little dark place in the back of your mind is going, what if, we still had a wonderful Christmas. So we went home and spent a little bit of time with family, even though here we were in various stages of lockdown and stuff, but we isolated, blah, blah, blah. So we were able to spend time with family over Christmas, which was lovely. So we had just this magical first Christmas as a family. We wore like matching pajamas and the whole thing. It was really, really lovely. And then, in early January, Miles started showing some strange symptoms. Like he started vomiting at strange times, sort of early in the morning sometimes. And so, you know, again, we brought this to, at this point, we were sort of in between our regular family doctor and our oncology team because we thought, you know, any of these things could be just baby things. So we contacted our family doctor when he started vomiting, and, you know, he sort of said it could be reflux, could be just something that he ate, you know, it was just kind of the sporadic vomiting every couple of days. And then into January, it started progressing a little bit where the vomiting became a little bit more frequent and more worrisome. So we brought him in, and ultimately we had a checkup at Sick Kids, and they found that the cancer had metastasized. So they did some imaging of his brain, and basically at that point, there were too many lesions for them to recommend any course of treatment. So we got that news January 20th, I believe. And they basically said, there's not much we can do. It's too progressed. So,
What a turnaround too from the week before Christmas to be like, oh, there are a couple little lymph nodes and we think it's really okay. It's really nothing, to, I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. Wow.
Yeah. It it was crazy. It just, as I'm sure you can relate to, it felt like a bad dream. Like, it just felt like this isn't possible.
Yeah.
Like, this can't be real.
Right.
So yeah, so they basically, gave us a few options of what to do. None of them really included treatment that we would be comfortable with, and ethically, the doctors didn't feel that any course of treatment was gonna, it would have ultimately really diminished his remaining quality of life. So
Right.
no. And so we brought him home, and by this point, it was amazing how quickly he declined. Like, it was almost like he knew as soon as he got to the hospital that he could really, like, show how bad it was, because he really wasn't showing, other than vomiting, he wasn't showing any other major neurological symptoms before that. But in the couple of days we were in the hospital, and then after the general anesthesia from the MRI, he was definitely a bit of a different boy. Over those few days, he really started to decline. So yeah, we decided to bring him home. So we brought him home to our home in Bracebridge, and we basically just, waited for him to die. Those 3 weeks were like indescribable.
Yeah.
It's just, when you know that it's inevitable, you're just kind of on the edge of your seat waiting for something to happen. And, we wanted to make sure to make his last few weeks as joyful as possible, because that was so him. We didn't want to, sit around crying. We just wanted to, when he had his wakeful moments, we would play with him and read to him and sing to him, and make sure that that we were giving him as best a last little bit of time as we could. So
yeah.
He turned 1 on February 5th, when we were so happy that he made it.
Yeah.
Because we weren't sure that he was going to make it to his first birthday, but he made it, which we always joke that he had FOMO, fear of missing out. So we were not overly surprised that he made it to his birthday, because like, he was the type of baby where, like, if there was action, he was in it,
Yeah.
So missing a chance for a party was like not an option for him.
Right.
So we celebrated his first birthday, and he was, he had some wakeful moments, and opened some presents, and he had his little feeding tube and everything else. But yeah, we enjoyed his first birthday, and then really after that, things declined pretty rapidly. He passed away 4 days after his birthday. So he passed away on the 9th. So yeah, we know we did everything we could, but you still always wonder, what if we had caught it sooner, or what if they had done a scan of his brain early on. They never had any reason to suspect. He had a really rare form of sarcoma, but they never had reason to suspect that it would have metastasized to his brain, when there was really no other evidence, in his torso or neck, or lymph nodes in his neck. Like, there was never any evidence to suggest that they should have scanned his head. So,
and such an aggressive cancer, growing so fast.
Yeah, it was incredible.
And honestly, usually when you have an aggressive, faster growing tumor, it responds pretty well to treatment. And interestingly, it's because you can really attack fast growing cells, and they're growing so incredibly fast that it's oftentimes a little easier to kill them. So I can certainly see why the team was very optimistic. I mean, I would have been too. Like, if I would have been your pediatrician, I would have been feeling really good about everything and how it went.
Yeah. And they did, they were, our team was just incredible. Like, they really were phenomenal. And they, they were devastated when we got the news. Like, they were devastated. And, we all just stood there in the room and cried together. And it was like, they just said, we never would have thought in a million years that this is how it would go. So it was just an incredibly aggressive cancer. And I think, you can probably speak to this medically, but I think in babies, their cells are growing and dividing so quickly that once this aggressive cancer took hold, it was kind of like, I don't know if we ever had a fighting chance. It was just so aggressive and awful. So So
wow.
So we lost him in February, and it's just,
it's just awful. Those days following, after they took him away, it was like this silence in the house.
Yeah.
And it was just, we worked so long and so hard to have him, and we had our family finally.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had everything we wanted, and then it just, it still sometimes feels like a dream, where it's just like his life was relatively, short, even though,
For sure.
we had lots of amazing moments, but his life was so short that it feels like, after he was gone, it's kind of like, was that real? Like, was
Right.
that whole life real? It's just so bizarre. So
Yeah, because it really hasn't been that long yet, even since he's been gone.
it was 5 months last week. So
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, honey, I know when you wrote to me back in January, you wrote to me that you had just brought him home. Yeah. And oh, my heart just broke for you. And I just kind of waited, knowing that someday you would write back.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry. Did you have hospice and things like that? I just wonder, with him being in such a hard part of the pandemic, what kind of support did you get?
Well, the team at Sick Kids, they have a palliative team, the PACT team. They're the pediatric advanced care team.
Mm-hmm.
And they came in as soon as we got his terminal diagnosis. They came in and basically said, you're welcome to stay here at the hospital to live out the next however long he has here. They were amazing. They just said, we want you to consider this home. If that's where you choose to have him die, we'll support you in that decision completely. So we could have stayed at the hospital. And then there is a hospice that's about an hour south of where we live in Barrie, Ontario, and they are equipped to take pediatric cases. But we just felt, as much as hospice was something we considered very, very quick, briefly, it was really my husband who said, we've been doing a lot of his medical care through chemo anyway. I became, as a lot of parents, medical parents do, you become kind of a pseudo nurse. So I had done a bunch of training for, managing his PICC line and all the different stuff with his chemo care. So we knew that there would be some medical care involved, but we also had an amazing home care nurse who was through Miles's chemo treatment. She was our home care nurse. She did all of the visits for his dressing changes and all of that kind of thing. And then so she actually, in a strange twist, she also works in palliative care. So we knew that she would be able to come and be our home care nurse while he was at home to die. So so she was able to.
That's a blessing.
Yeah, it was amazing. She's just like, she's phenomenal. So she was able to give us, the daily home visits and stuff, and manage his pain. And so we felt really quite supported in being able to bring him home to die, even though it was, scary as heck. Like, you know that you're going to be on your own for most of the day, managing, making sure, pain was obviously the biggest thing we wanted to avoid. And so, making sure we stayed on top of his pain was our biggest priority. Yeah. So, we just, had to set alarms for all of his meds and make sure that we were administering all of his meds properly. And so that was a big stress, but looking back, I don't think we would have wanted it any other way.
Yeah. I was just going to say that. I'm sure there is such, not comfort exactly, but just a little bit of satisfaction that you were able to do everything that you could, and you were able to be the one caring for him.
Yeah. And I genuinely, we've talked about it, my husband and I, a lot. And, I don't think he would have lasted until his birthday if he hadn't have been at home. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think that, just having that familiar surrounding, and, we had him, sleeping in our bed with us. And, I don't think he would have lasted.
Yeah.
If we hadn't brought him home and been just in our familiar space with him. I think that for us was just the right thing to do.
And so special for you to be able to
Yeah.
have that moment and have,
Yeah.
those pictures and just that time to be able to celebrate that huge milestone, because that was a huge milestone,
Yeah.
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 Yeah. To be
Yeah.
able to do that with everything that he went through. So what about family? Did you have family that was able to spend time with you then?
We did. So again, in this sort of a coincidental turn of events, my parents had come to visit just after Christmas. So they were here in January. They were here when we had first brought him down to the hospital. So, they were here staying at our home when we got, my parents live about 4 hours away in Ottawa.
Mm-hmm.
And so they just happened to be staying here when we got that diagnosis and when we brought him home. So they said, if you'll have us, my husband's parents live just down the road and we're all very close. And so they said, if you want us to stay until he passes, we're here. Like, we're here for you. So they were amazing. So they ended up staying at my in-laws just so we could all have space and stuff. So they stayed at my in-laws for 3 weeks. They were there, and they all came to visit at the same time. All the grandparents, they would come every day for a chunk of time to be with him and hold him and play with him. And then it got to be, as he was starting to decline, we felt that it was easier to just have one set of them at a time. So my parents would come one day, my husband Kent's parents would come the next day. And so it was a really precious time. Looking back, it's like, I'm just so glad that they got that time with him, because, it was precious. And we weren't letting, especially because of COVID, we weren't letting a lot of people, visit. We didn't have any other than our nurse. We literally didn't have
I mean, that was your little bubble around him.
Bubble. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we had our siblings come, and our nieces and nephews, just to kind of say goodbye the day after we got home. But other than that, especially as he declined, we just, we wanted to just have that time with him. So,
well, and it was a blessing really for all those grandparents to be able to be together and support each other through that.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they they joked. They drank a lot of wine and watched a lot of movies, and they during that time living together, they were already really close friends. But I think that experience has definitely, obviously, brought them closer. I think that they were able to just lean on each other in a way that, because for grandparents, and my mom and I have talked about this, I think for grandparents, it's almost like a double whammy, because they're hurting and grieving for their grandchild, but they're also hurting so much for their child.
Yeah.
To
watch your child grieve. I mean, so hard.
Yeah.
So hard, right?
Yeah, it's awful. So, my mom has said on multiple occasions, like, my heart hurts so much for you guys,
Yeah. I mean, I think of that even as losing Andy and having other kids, right? I mean, to watch them mourn their brother was really hard too. I mean, as much pain as I'm in, then to see your kids in pain is really just awful. It's awful to experience. So I can see that would be so hard for grandparents. And so much too, I've heard from some different grandparents too, and they oftentimes can not even be so focused on their child and trying to support their child's grief that they almost ignore their own a little bit. So that's why I'm so glad that they all had each other, because they could mourn with each other as grandparents and not always feel like they have to take this parent role of trying to do whatever they can for you,
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, they were really able to lean on one another. And I think, looking back, I really think that time for, as much as it was to support us, it was a time for them to be supported by one another. And they were a huge source of comfort and support for us during that time. And, I'll never forget those moments that we had. My dad plays guitar, and so he would sit with Miles and play guitar, and both of our dads play guitar, so they would play guitar with Miles, and you know, our moms would just cuddle with him and just, you know, even just lie with us in bed when he was sleeping. You know, they'd just come in and just to spend time together. It was really special.
Yeah, that is special. And you are 100% right that he lived longer than he would have had he not been at home. I think about what wonderful moments he had, and to be able to be sung to and cuddled and all of that. He wouldn't have had that at a hospital.
No. And I mean, not to diminish our hospitals, they're amazing, but you know, like it's a different environment. You've got beeping machines and you've got nurses in and out. And, you know, I think that to be able to have that time together in our home was, it was definitely the right choice for us.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So talk about that time afterward then, after Miles died. And you mentioned just briefly, you know, when they took him away.
It's still, that's one of the ways I keep coming back to describing it is like a dream. I mean, parts of it feel like a really bad dream and scary dream and sad, but parts of it, his life and even his illness and when he was dying feel like this beautiful dream. And so I spent a lot of time in the first few weeks in that sort of dream state where it was like, you know, you wake up and in those first few moments of waking up, you wonder, like, was that real? Like, is this really happening? So, you know, those first few weeks when we were just at home without him, it would just be waking up. And I mean, you know, that feeling where it's just, you get like the biggest punch in the gut you've ever had every day.
Yeah.
Every minute of every day. The pain is just indescribable. Like it's nothing like I ever would have imagined.
Right.
It's just really, and it's disorienting. That's the way I describe it, is like, you feel like everything it looks different. It's like waking up in a new, I think of like my favorite movie as a kid was Wizard of Oz. And it's like, you know, Dorothy wakes up after the tornado and she's in this new world. Like it's just, everything looks different. Everything sounds different. Everything feels different. Like it's a really, really bizarre experience to have a loss like this, you know?
Yeah.
So.
Well, and what I think about you is I know you were listening to the podcast and doing stuff to try to get yourself ready, right?
Yeah.
But I know what I've been told by other people is you just can't get yourself ready. And it's still like, as much as you thought, okay, I'm going to be ready for this day, the day comes and like, wow, I really wasn't ready.
Yeah. It's so true. I mean, we were, you know, listening to your podcast and doing a ton of reading. And, you know, I was talking to my counselor who I had been, you know, had a relationship with while Miles was sick. And, you know, you do all of these things. You're just grasping at anything to try to prepare yourself because you know it's coming. It's like a train. It's just like, it's coming and there's no way to avoid it. And so you're doing anything desperately to try to prepare yourself in that sort of, and that's, you know, I've done a lot of reading about that kind of anticipatory grief where you're grieving something happening before it actually happens. And then when it actually happens, it's not like you imagined, even though you've prepared yourself. And it was really strange. So, you know, it's, as you know, it's, I sometimes resent some of the analogies of grief, like a journey and a whatever. But
my husband hates that term. He hates the term journey, and I tend to use it because there isn't much better. I just feel like I've tried to search for a better term, but there just isn't much better. So I end up using it anyway, and I just don't use it in front of him because it irritates him.
Yeah. You'll set him up.
Right.
Yeah, it's funny. I think that word, you know, especially journey comes up, and I think the reason it comes up is because
it is really like you're walking on this path, and it's not linear, and it changes from minute to minute. It changes from second to second. And, it's like, well-meaning family and friends, would ask, especially in the early days, like, what do you need? What do you need? And it's like, I literally don't know, because it changes every second of every day. Sometimes I need to cry and have someone listen. Sometimes I need to escape and not talk about it. Sometimes I need to, just sit in silence and think about him. And, it's like, there's just I think that's the idea of the journey, is that it's ever changing. It's ever, like, the landscape and your reality is just, it's in flux all the time. And so, that those early days, I think the early days, directly following his death, were that acute, like, just gut-wrenching, acute pain that you really think, how can I function? How can I do anything? And I know you've probably had tons of people say this to you, but, like, I don't know how you're doing it. And again,
and the response is always, I don't know either.
I don't know either. And I don't have a choice.
I don't have a choice.
Well, my husband and I, had a very frank conversation, when we had another friend say to us, like, I just don't know how you guys are doing this. I don't know how you're getting up. And it's like, well, in grief, you basically have two choices. You can either get up and try to function in your life as best you can, or you can literally curl up and completely retreat, or end your life. Like, really, as awful as that sounds, you really do have those two choices. And it's not even a conscious decision. I mean, if you obviously have supportive people in your life, and you have, you make the decision to live, then you just do it. There's really no other way but through. And again, it's well-intending people, but to have people say, like, I don't know how you're doing it. It's like, well, you would do it. You have no choice. Like, you just wake up, and every day is different, but you go through it.
Yeah, you're right. I hate that too. And I get that a ton from people that they don't know how to do it. And I usually just say, I don't know either, but you just do. You just do. And I think back to what you said about waking up every day, just thinking back to waking up every day, and for a minute you forget, right? For just a minute, a second, you forget. And my mind would always come back to, it would just be like someone screaming in my head, Andy's dead, Andy's dead, over and over. And like, it's so horrible, because I think I just don't want to quite believe it. And part of my brain is telling me, you have to believe it. You have to get it in your head to accept that this has happened. Right. And so that's why it would just go in my head again and again and again, to just, like, you need to accept this, because I don't want to. I mean, you don't want to accept it. You don't.
No, and it's almost like your rational brain is trying to convey it to, like, your body and your heart, because your body and your heart just can't accept it.
Right.
And so your brain just does everything it can to bring you back and say, like, this happened, this is true.
Yeah. And I think that's exactly right. I hadn't thought about it that way, but that's exactly right. It's your rational brain trying to convince your heart and soul and your being that this really just happened to you. Yeah. And you just don't want to. I mean, I remember going to support group. I've said this on the show before, and I sitting in support group that very first time, and a little voice in my head was saying, you don't belong here. You don't belong here. Just run. Just run. Yeah. This is not happening to you. This is not your life. You are not one of these people.
Yeah.
But I was. I was. And I still am.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing that, I've talked to my counselor a lot about this, because one of the models of grief, one of the only models of grief that I had ever been exposed to, was the sort of stages of grief, the Ross Kubler or whatever, stages of grief. And, my counselor explained that's been largely taken out of context, and that these stages,
Right.
Anyway, but
But one of the sort of stages of grief is that shock and disbelief. And so I remember saying to my counselor, even several weeks after he had passed, I said, I think I'm still in shock. Like, is that possible that I still have, as you described, waking up and having these moments of, like, is this, how can this be real? Like, I can't, this complete and utter disbelief that this is your reality. And I remember saying to her, like, is it not, is it okay, but like, is it normal to still be in shock? And even months after, I mean, 5 months later, and I truly feel like I'm still in shock.
I think you are.
That this is our story. This is our life,
I think I was in shock for sure for at least 6 months, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you kind of, the way you think about shock, I mean, actual physical shock, like following an accident or anything, your body physically goes into that state of shock. But whenever I think of shock, I think of like that initial aftermath of the shock, and then it dissipates. And then somehow your brain does, sort of accept and start to process, at least in some way. But I wake up most days in shock. I wake up most days thinking, how is this?
How is this my life? How is this my life?
Yeah. Like, and how did we get here? My husband and I will sometimes look at each other and just say, how did we get here? Like, how is this our life?
Yeah. Go from that happy pregnancy, those blissful first couple of months, to this. Yeah. Like, how did that happen?
Yeah. And how did it, it's, I guess, cliche to say, why us, but, you look at, we're surrounded by friends and family who have these perfect, healthy babies. And a lot of them, thankfully were able to conceive pretty quickly. And, they have these perfect, healthy babies. And then, you look at us and it's just like, why was he taken from us after such a long struggle to get him in the first place? It's just, it's, it really is that shock. I don't think has gone away from me. And I keep sort of waiting for it to dissipate, and waiting for it to wake up one day and not feel like I'm in shock,
Yeah. And I think that it just comes and goes. And I said to you, I think I was in shock for at least 6 months, but, and I can't tell you like the day that it stopped happening. And I still will have days. I remember one just not long ago, we were at my in-laws' house up at the lake, and the kids were around, and I had this feeling of, this just isn't right. This just can't be happening. Like, I am 3 years out, next month, 3 years. And I still had a moment of, this can't really be happening. This really isn't your life right now. Like, my all 5 grandchildren should be there, not just 4, right? Yeah. It's so crazy that I feel like that can still sneak in on you at moments that you don't expect it,
Well, because it isn't right. And it isn't the way it's supposed to be. I mean, Andy's supposed to be with your family, and Miles is supposed to be with our family. Like, it's not, it isn't something logical, or, it really isn't right. And so I guess
we have that conversation. My husband and I have that conversation all the time. Like, this just isn't right. It's just not right. And so I it's nice to hear you say it like that, because I feel like that's what we say.
Absolutely. And I do think that it doesn't surprise me in some ways that even though you're 3 years out, you still, it's this deep internal feeling like this is not how things are supposed to be. And I spend a lot of time imagining. We just had a family trip where it was the same thing. Some of the grandchildren were there, and his cousins, and and I had that same feeling of, I spent most of that family vacation imagining him there, and imagining what he would have said, or not said, he wasn't talking, but how he would have been. And you know, he would have been 17 months old.
He would have been
When,
toddling
you know,
around
this
on that little leg, right? Yeah, on his little
exactly. So
prosthesis.
I picture him, you know, I pictured him by the water playing with his cousins, toddling around on his prosthesis and chasing the ducks and trying to feed the ducks. And, you know, I would literally vividly be able to picture him there, you know,
Yeah.
and it's like,
And I feel like that's what our mind does to kind of protect us a little bit and to give us,
yeah,
because in some ways I always feel like I shouldn't do that, which Gwen always says, don't should yourself. So I whenever I say
yeah,
you shouldn't, I shouldn't be doing something. It's you know,
yeah,
but I think it's my mind and my brain trying to just get a little moment of happiness, right? And
yeah,
if me
yeah,
just pretending just for a second, you know,
yeah,
that, you know, on Andy's birthday, his best friend came over and I hugged him, and for a second I let myself pretend I was hugging my boy, you know,
yeah,
just for a second. And I knew I wasn't. I knew that. But I just needed that for a second.
yeah,
I needed to pretend like I was holding mine, not somebody
yeah,
else's,
yeah,
you know?
absolutely. Absolutely. I think, you know, when you're dealing with such heaviness all the time and missing them, I think it only makes sense that we try to give ourselves these little moments of happiness and trying to picture the life that should have been, you
Right.
know, our reality that should have been, you know, imagining that if that can give us a moment of relief or peace, I think that, you know, it makes sense that our minds go there, because that's what, you know, that's what we want. We want
Right.
them here.
And you get just a
we
little
want
bit
them.
of peace and a little bit of comfort, and it brings me a little bit of happiness, even if it's just for a minute, and then I have to go back.
Yeah.
But I think it's okay. It's okay, and
Yeah.
it's what you need to do for yourself sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it feels good in those moments to do that. And so, you know, I've had one of my best friends always says to me, right now, you need to do what feels good.
Yeah.
And what feels good might be, you know, yeah, imagining those moments with him. What feels good might be saying no to going somewhere or doing something with family. My husband and I recently sort of made a decision, if travel allows, that we'll get away next Christmas, because I think Christmas is just going to be really painful, especially because we had such a magical Christmas this year.
Yeah.
And I know that you can't escape it. You can't run away from it. But at the end of the day, I think that being in our home for Christmas would just be too difficult this
Yeah.
year.
We left our first Christmas. We took off.
Did you?
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it
Okay.
was actually
With
very
all-
funny because we were in our grief support group and like, what's everybody doing for Christmas? And I was like, well, we are getting in an airplane on Christmas Eve and flying to Vegas. Now, my aunt lives in Vegas, so it wasn't us like going gambling in Vegas. We actually went to see with my family, but
Okay.
it was really beautiful. We did it actually Christmas Eve night. We were like on the plane Christmas Eve night when we normally would be opening presents and celebrating and doing all of this. I was like, I don't want to be anywhere, right?
Yeah.
I don't. So we
Yeah.
flew out there, and I think it was also nice too because we didn't get in until like, I don't know, way after midnight. So that then my aunt and her children and grandchildren could have, I think, a little bit of a nice Christmas before the mourning people got there, you know, all the bereaved,
Before all
sad
the sad
people. But that was kind of nice for me because I felt like I didn't ruin anybody's Christmas that way.
Yeah.
But yet, and I was around family because we needed to be around family, and I was far away from what we normally would have done. Right?
Yeah.
We were not in Michigan. We were not oftentimes we're with the Eric's family. We were not, I didn't put up a Christmas tree. I didn't do any of it. Nothing.
Yeah.
I didn't buy Christmas presents. And like, there were people that said, you didn't get your kids Christmas presents? Like, nope, we didn't.
Nope.
I just couldn't. We couldn't do any of it.
Yeah. And I think that's hard. That's hard to explain. I don't know if you had a hard time explaining, but I think that can be a difficult thing to explain to the rest of the family, that desire to just get away and
get out of anything that is reminding you of what that Christmas should look like, you know? And I think it's a tricky thing to explain. And I recently just sort of mentioned to my mom, and I think I could tell, I think she's a little bit sort of, wondering why, or wondering why we might need, and I think my husband and I, for us, I think it needs to be just us. And it's no slight on our family. We love our family dearly, but it's just, I think for us, we need to just get out of Dodge and do something totally different, and not be feeling, I mean, we're going to feel his absence, but not be feeling his absence in such a pronounced way, in contrast to our perfect Christmas last year, and I love the holidays. I love, obviously we're in Canada, we have a lot of snow, and, I love that. But part of me is just like, I want, palm trees and anything different.
There you go. Vegas. I tell you, it worked.
Yeah, we might do Vegas. Who knows? What's your aunt's address?
That's right. That's right. She's pretty great. Yeah. It's funny because I know that year too. I saw my dad. My dad lives out in that area, not in Vegas, but in that area. And because I said, I mean, I'm not buying you a Christmas present. Like, I'm not getting, because I think he was a little surprised that we didn't come like bearing gifts. And I was like, oh, I didn't get anybody a Christmas present. It's not just you. Like, and he said, not even Peter or Catherine? Like, nope, nobody. I mean, it's, you have to just give me that. Like, you don't understand. And please just give me that I'm sorry I didn't get anything for you. And please, I would be really happy if you didn't get anything for me, because I don't want it. I don't.
And I think that's, it's a tough, it's a tough pill to swallow for family, I think, because again, unless they've lost a child, they just, it's very difficult to relate to, that feeling. And I think, I talked to another parent that I know through a grief group, and, we were talking about just sort of holidays and just that urge to just not do it, not celebrate, and not, I think a lot of us share that, especially, sounds like in the earlier stages and earlier, years of our grief. It's like, you don't feel like doing what you used to do. You need something different. I don't know.
And I would encourage you to, well, first of all, I did do a Surviving the Holidays episode that you can listen to way back. I did a long time ago, which I think would be helpful. But it's just kind of reassessing every time and every holiday. I just told you earlier that our, the 3-year anniversary of Andy's death is coming up, and we're going to have to kind of reassess. What are we going to do this year? How are we what's this going to look like? And I think every single one, you just need to approach it individually and say, how are we going to do this year? What are we going to do? And really as a couple, to be able to get input on what do you need? What do I need? And figure out what's best for both of you,
Yeah. And I think that's all you can do really, is continually reassess. And I mean, I think that's sort of a good piece of advice for anyone, I think, is that continual reassessment of, okay, in this moment and on this holiday or on this anniversary, what do we need? What do I need? What do we need? And what's going to feel good? I think it comes down to, what my friend says, you have to do what feels right and what feels good right now. You can't do things for people.
Right.
You can't factor in, you can't overthink as you usually would all of the different things and balance other people's needs and stuff. It's like, you can be
really selfish at that point.
Yeah. And and I think selfish is a tricky word, because it it indicates that you're being kind of malicious, and and it's like, no, I think being selfish at this point is actually like the highest form of self-care, is like being able to to continually ask yourself, like, what do I need in this moment? And what is going to make me feel good? And what is going to make me okay right now?
Mm-hmm.
And if that's something that appears selfish to other people, that's really on them, honestly. Right. And I have a hard time with that because I'm a bit of a people pleaser, and I like to know that people are, thinking, oh, wow, they're doing things that are thoughtful for other people or whatever.
See,
but
you're like, Canadian. Canadians are nice people, right?
We say please and thank you a lot, don't we?
I know you do. It's so funny you're explaining that. And I was like, that's the stereotypical what Americans think of Canadians. Like, Canadians are just always nice.
I guess I'm playing right into those stereotypes.
You are. But that's okay, because I'm Midwest nice, because Midwest is pretty nice too. Or people will call it West Michigan nice, because in West Michigan we're just kind of nice. And I'm a pediatrician, and like pediatricians are always nice. I don't think you can be a mean pediatrician. We just hired a new person at our office to be up in the front, and I said, and she could tell she was nervous, and I was like, you don't have to be nervous. We're all pediatricians. We're just nice.
We're just nice people. It's really hard to get us upset and mad. Yeah. It's like, we're just nice.
So anyway, you're Canadian nice. So that's good. But you need to get a little bit of the, I don't know. Yeah. What do we have to do? We have to what's the stereotypic more selfish? I would say maybe East Coast New Yorker or something.
I was going to say New Yorker. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah, I know. I think so too. Sorry to all New Yorkers who are listening. I know you're probably very nice people, but we have to, in these moments where you feel like you want to please other people, grasp a little bit of New York.
Yeah. Just take the essence of New York and just say, no. I'm going to stick up for what I need.
What I need right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for sharing, Miles, with us today. Is there anything else you feel like you really wanted to share with the audience? Any piece of advice or anything?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. I think, I think the biggest thing for me has just been connecting with other grieving parents. I think that, for anyone who's about to lose or has lost a child, I think really finding those connections, whether even if it's like we're doing just virtually, like I connected with a woman from one of my grief groups, and we have our own, sort of Zoom chats every couple of weeks. And I think it's to speak to someone who really speaks the same language as you do, and you can be completely yourself and not censor yourself and not, do what we do to make other people comfortable around us. I think I think it just really helps. We speak a language that not a lot of people understand.
And so, you can say things that would make other people uncomfortable, and it won't make them uncomfortable. And that is so precious and nice.
It is precious. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm so grateful for your podcast, and I'm so grateful that you've taken this, you've chosen this platform to honor Andy. And it really is helping to connect and reassure parents out there that there are other people who speak this language. Even though we're a relatively small club, it's there's a ton of comfort in other grieving parents. So thank you for what you do.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Losing a Child, Always Andy's Mom. Please subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast player. We are always looking for new show ideas. If you'd like to be a guest, know someone who'd be a great guest, or have a show idea, please email us at marcy@andysmom.com. Be sure to visit the webpage, andysmom.com, for more content, including Marcy's blog. There you can also sign up to receive updates via email. Together, let's work to inspire hope, one day at a time.